Hey you guys, welcome to this Minecraft Survival Starter House tutorial. My name is Wintertooth100, and today we'll be learning some building concepts I used on this house from the Adventure Pack Mod Pack series that this house was made on. We will not be doing a block by block build, rather we'll discuss the general shapes, ideas, and block palettes that went into this creation. For those of you who recognize this build from the modded mini-series, I will be using a vanilla block palette so everyone can build this starter house. Now, I'm going to do my best to keep this video as short as possible. You're going to see some things on the screen right now. On the right hand side is a map, on the left hand side is some stats about my character. That is because we are still technically playing in the modded world, so we have access to the modded blocks. However, like I said, we are not going to be using the modded blocks. We're going to be using a vanilla version of this house. So you can see that they are fairly similar, but there is definitely a difference. This mod is bringing in some bluestone, which is absolutely fantastic, and I think they should be bringing bluestone to the real game because I really do love it. But the light blue terracotta is pretty good. It does the job, I think. So, you know, just a heads up. All right, we're gonna tackle this house the same way that I thought of how to build it, and that, of course, always starts with the shape. So one thing really came to mind for me, and that was that I wanted to have a one horse stable be a part of the build itself. I knew I wanted it to be physically a thing that was defined inside the build and not just something tacked onto the side later. So I came up with this design where we would have a staircase on the right hand side come up into a tower and over the top of a horse stable. So that was basically my inspiration. From there, it was just figuring out the shape. This particular shape is a square for the tower, and then we did two rectangles meshed together. So we got a big rectangle for the big body of the house, and then another rectangle to just kind of squish into it, offset a little bit, give it some shape, and I think it looks really nice. Now, of course, the build also has vertical shape, but we'll come back to that in a moment, because now we have to talk about the block palette. So for those of you playing modded, we're just going to do a casual look over, and you can get an idea for what is all in here, so you can use the same things in your build if you're playing, again, the modded version. This is a spruce post, not a spruce fence, that's why it's sideways, and yeah, hopefully you get all that. Now, the only difference between the modded version palette and the vanilla palette is this swap. So everything you see here is swapped. So instead of the bricks, we have andesite. Instead of the small bricks, we have normal andesite. Instead of the smooth, we have the light blue terracotta. And then the same is true for the rest of the andesite. Don't worry about the spruce posts. We're not going to use those at all in the vanilla version. And instead of these iron gates, we're going to just use iron bars. So that is the difference for the vanilla. Otherwise, with that one little swap, you can take this build and make it look like this build. So you can go from modded to vanilla just like that. From there, I kind of just identified what I thought would be the most important thing to get right, and that was the horse stable. So I actually came in and I built up the horse stable first using some temporary blocks. I just used these stone bricks to help, you know, house the horse itself. So we're gonna go ahead and just kind of fill these in a little bit, mostly just getting the horse stable right. If you can't actually park your horse and get in and out of here, then it's not really a horse stable, and well, that was kind of an issue. So again, just working on the problem areas first, making sure that they are going to work out right. Something I had to keep in mind for the horse stable was the height of the roof. I knew we wanted to walk over the top of it, so we couldn't have a pointed roof. So that meant we had to figure out a way to make a nice flat roof that it was going to look good but also be functional. And for me, the answer was trapdoors. Yeah, I had to place in a few temporary blocks, but that's no big deal for a builder, am I right? There we go. We get these all plugged in. And then effectively, we have a functioning horse stable. Now we'll come back to this later for the beautification, but we just want to make sure that this is right, because this 100% is going to determine how tall the tower needs to be so we can actually get up here and walk across. Next, there's several ways to do this next part, but now that we know kind of how tall this is going to be, I just built up the perimeter of the lower half of the build using a single material from the palette, just for simplicity's sake. So we're going to wrap this all the way around for the house and the tower. Now, it's here you can make a decision. You don't have to, but I did. I chose one of my rectangles and just made it a single block taller than the other. That way we have a little bit of vertical shape introduced into this. But we're going to move over here. We want to make sure, first and foremost, that we can actually get in our into the house, especially for survival mode, because you're going to have to be going up and down this a lot. So we're going to be working out where the stairs going to go, which is going to determine where this floor goes. And the ultimate goal here is to make sure that we can get up into the top port where we can actually walk across and get into the house. Now that we have this, we can move on to the next step. Feel free to do little decorations here if you want to make it look nice. We're just going to slap in the iron bars. The only place where these iron bars go in the entire build. Check that out. Now, this is the part that I will spend the most time on because it is honestly the most important part for this kind of build. It kind of has a like a BOO look to it. It's mostly done through texturing, so we need to discuss texturing. First and foremost, having a block palette is king in this regard. Having similar looking blocks that can make up your walls is what's going to bring it to life. Another thing to think about is when you're using these textures is what is going to make the most sense where. So we have cobblestone, we have mossy. Moss itself, of course, is a plant growing on your materials, your blocks, and it grows in a very particular way. It's usually determined by where it's exposed to the most water. The moss will grow outward from the source. So like if we just did this like super random like this, like we're kind of implying that this block regularly gets wet, that block regularly gets wet, and it's kind of strange. It kind of breaks the immersion a little bit. So we're trying to go for, like when we use the mossy, try to think about where logically you might see moss actually developing and growing, and then how it spreads, because that's really going to be how we determine where these things grow. Is like it's going to spread. Like obviously if it rains and the water floods a little bit, the whole bottom section, like it wouldn't be too odd or awkward to see that there is a lot of moss growth near the bottom for your texturing process. We don't want to go too overboard with it, right? Because then we're kind of saying that the people who live in this house don't take care of it. So that's also a part of your texture. Your texture kind of tells a story. Another thing is the smooth stone is kind of like a plaster, right? So your house is made out of bricks, but then they put this outside plaster on it to protect the bricks. So everywhere you see a brick pattern is kind of like where the plaster has kind of worn away over time. And every place you see cobble is kind of like the bricks itself is so damaged it's literally crumbling apart. And then of course we can have the transition. So we go from like kind of a smooth and we work our way into a cracked brick kind of texture. And so we're actually showing here that the plaster has worn away, the moss is taking over here. We still have some good plaster up top, so typically like more towards the top where it's away from water damage and such, it'll still retain that kind of smooth look. So we're going to go through, we're going to texturize all the way around, and then we can move on to the body of the house. Now, we've grabbed our second palette here because we need a specific block from this, and well, it's for a very important reason, a reason I think you guys are really going to like. So with the whole thing sort of textured, something you may notice is from the top, imagine, we still have all the plaster. The next row is kind of like we're trying to mix in stone bricks, and then it goes into cracked bricks, and then it goes into the mossy or cobble, and then from there we can get into the mossy cobble. So it's literally a gradient of blocks working its way from top to bottom. So you notice that along the bottom is more of the mossy stuff. It's kind of creeping upward, and then at the top it's more predominantly bricks and smooth stone. So that looks really nice. We got a gradient with our palette, but I want to do 2 layers of our beautiful blue color, because when we have this additional layer mixed in, we can start doing a sort of fade or blend rather between the top section and the bottom section. They are using different block palettes, so mixing them at least a little bit is going to really help the build not look so jarring. So if we look at it as it is right now, you'll notice there's kind of a harsh line, and there's a reason we wanted to throw that in, and that is so we can come through and kind of selectively, a little randomly, we're going to pick a few blocks and we're just going to replace. We're going to start bringing the blue down into the area, and don't be afraid to come a little sparingly down into it. But we just kind of want to get this blend going. We want it to look like these things are truly attached to each other and not just this hard line, because that hard line can really be jarring and pull you kind of out of the immersion, and we want to make sure that this thing is immersive as possible. So again, we're just going to bring it through, but it's not just the blue. We're going to grab the smooth stone and we're going to do the same thing going up. So we can pick a few places in the blue, and this is why we did the 2 layers on top, so we can actually mix the blue into here. So there's actually a physical layer section in the build that genuinely is a combination of the block palettes. So once we get the smooth stone all the way through, just kind of, I'm just doing it randomly, just dotting it through. Don't overthink it, just kind of, you know, pick a few blocks, go for it. And once we're happy with that, the way that looks, we can grab another one of the blocks. Wherever we did the smooth stone, we can kind of sparingly pick a few of them and replace them with the bricks themselves. And if we have a look at it, this is kind of what we're going to end up with. I think it's looking really good so far, but now we're going to move on to the next thing, and that is building the shapes of them. And honestly, it's really simple. The way I did this was I literally just grabbed the main block that was going to be this, and I just kind of worked out some easy shapes. Again, this is not a block by block tutorial. This is just kind of my process in how I built something that looks the way that these builds do. So again, we're just going to kind of outline where some of these shapes are, and the reason why we're outlining them is because if we don't like it, they're very easy to remove and replace. We can change the heights on a whim, we can change the material on a whim, and most importantly, we can make sure that this thing is going to kind of look the way we want it to look. Looking at these shapes, we can be like, okay, I definitely want to have an A-frame or something here, so we can literally start boxing out some A-frame shapes, and you seriously, you can just physically, genuinely just shape it out. Add shapes, remove shapes, experiment with how these things connect to each other, and we're going to move on to the next bit. I'm going to go ahead and throw all my shapes in, and we'll work on the roofs. Some additional information, you can actually, to help separate these, if you don't like having these super blended, you can do something with like the slabs and run them across in a back and forth pattern. And what this does is we're physically making a division across the build, and to help blend them, of course, if you use trapdoors every other one, it makes this thing look a lot smoother. So we're actually going to end up wrapping a few of these around where these lines were. I'm going to keep the blend. I actually like the combination of the two, but I just thought that would be pretty helpful for the blending process. And then when it comes to the windows are going to help you kind of determine your shape. Now you can do it either way. You can make your shape first and then make windows that fit, or if you're like me and you like to have specific windows actually installed, you can do your windows first, and this will kind of tell you how big to make the shape of your house, right? So if I know I want 3 tall windows here, just like this, and then of course we want these to have a nice cap on them so they look good. Now all of a sudden I know that if I shape this out and I brought this across right here for some reason, that my window that I wanted is not going to fit. So if you have an idea of what the types of windows you want to do, I say go for your window shapes first, and that will again help you determine how big the shape of your house needs to be beyond that. But if you don't have any preferences for windows, then just work on your shape however you want, and then you can fit windows after the fact. Again, this is just for people who already know the types of windows they want. Now, before we jump directly into the roofs, we're going to have us another look around. There's some obvious places where I can just feel I want windows to be, and so going around, I'm kind of just getting a feel for, does a window fit here? Do I want a window here? What else can I put into this spot if it's not going to be a window? Maybe I'll do a balcony in the back. Spoiler alert, I do a balcony in the back. But, that's kind of what we're looking for here. We're going around, and we're kind of boxing out the shape, trying to think of what's actually going to go in these places. Like I could see right here, this actually needs to have a beam coming down, so I know it's more centered on this. But we look at this like, okay, maybe a door's going to go here. Well, I don't know how to box out the door yet because I haven't figured out the flooring precisely yet. So we're going to leave this for now. But we're going to do roofs, and then we're going to start marking out where the floors are going to be on the inside, and that will kind of tell us where the rest of things like doors are going to go, and having their doors in place is going to tell us where little windows are going to go, and it's going to tell us where the balconies are going to go. It's going to tell us a lot of stuff. So we're going to get the roof in place, and for that we're going to need our block palette. Now, you don't necessarily need to do the roof completely. I personally just like to have the roof done. It helps give me a sense of completion. It's almost like a checkpoint in the building process to get the actual hat of the house in place. But we're going to go through, and every place where these things are going to connect up, we're just going to start running our roof together and bringing it to a close, and then directly after this we're going to jump into our floors of the build, which is also pretty straightforward. Something else to think about, this particular build really brings up the question, is there anything special about the roof? And for this build's sake, the answer actually is yes, there is something a little special, and it's this little section here. We have a balcony that is directly on top of the roof, so that's something to keep an eye out for and plan for. So we're going to make sure to get that all slotted in. So I'm going to fill in the rest of the roof, and we'll take a look at it. And just like that, we have our balcony in place. So I just used some basic trap doors on top of slabs, so that's how we get the separation so easily. These are actually super easy to get in place. And then we have a double door situation, so we can actually get up here. The purpose of this thing is, in the modded world, if there's a way to fly besides Elytra, you have a way to land up here. And then, of course, for normal vanilla with Elytra, you can actually land on the roof, and you don't have to go all the way to the ground if you don't actually want to. So this is wrapped around. I've brought in some more of the blue to fill in gaps. We don't want to be able to see the inside from the top of the roof, so these are all in. And then with some of these spots, like right here where it was starting to look flat, I just decided to throw in another window because I thought that helped really break it up and make it look really nice. But we're gonna hop on in, and we're gonna start getting our floor ready. The only thing we know right now is that this is going to be floor level 1 at the very least, because that's where our stairs comes up and actually connects to everything. So what I like to do is I like to come through and just kind of slot in a few beams, try to keep them evenly spaced where I can, and work my way through. And then I'm going to take the slabs of the birch, and I'm going to see, perfectly 3. Okay, yeah, excellent. And then I'm going to do some slabbing. Now, there are some considerations to make. We did add windows on the exterior without considering the interior. So there's going to be some challenges, and we're going to have to do some work to resolve that. So we'll focus on that as soon as I get this installed. All right, let's fix the issue right now. Okay, so we come through the front door, right? And we are at the right level for a window here. That kind of tells us that maybe we can have another window somewhere in here. Maybe right here there's a window. So we know that there can be good window spots for this. It actually overlooks the opening. It's kind of a great spot for it. We have an idea of if we go centered on this, we might be able to throw a door on this, or if we do a dividing wall, maybe we'll throw a door in right here instead. But we have this issue. That window is kind of tall, isn't it? So first of all, we can knock this out. That way we have the standing height on it. That kind of resolves so we can see out this window, and then these potential windows at the correct height. But you'll notice we have this issue. So we're going to have to figure out a solution for that. Don't fret too much. If you come across problems like this, just roll with the punches. You know what's going to happen up here? Just all of a sudden, we have like a little den situation going on. So yeah, there's just going to be like this raised platform. We'll get some stairs in here. There'll be a little bit of a dividing wall possibly coming through. It's just interior decorating, and we have a little den situation for these windows. So that's what happens when you design your windows without designing the interior. You have to build to the exterior. We're also going to want to weigh upstairs and downstairs, so we're probably going to end up doing some kind of like spiral staircase. This could actually get us down into this super dark basement, but we have basement access now, and then if we continue to do some kind of staircase, we can use this to get all the way up to the second story, and so we're gonna have to figure that out as well. So we know we have this issue, of course. We have to be even with the window that we slotted in. There are really no other considerations up here, so in theory you could make the entire floor this height. However, that makes for a really tall roof down here. So what I would do instead is figure out where this roof would feel at least semi-natural to have an end, right? So we're gonna grab some blocks. Maybe we'll do some stripped wood, and we'll do some beams across the ceiling, maybe, right? So that we can have like this really nice, intricate-looking ceiling. Maybe we'll do something like that. Maybe we'll get some trapdoors in like that. There we go. We can have a really nice-looking ceiling. That leaves us plenty of space here to actually accommodate for another floor. However, because this is so much higher and we still have space, we could say that this is maybe, for example, some kind of bedroom, and we can bring this out a certain distance. Maybe right here is good enough, and then we'll do some kind of, you know, staircase system, or perhaps let's actually get the floor, right? So we got the floor block, and then this will be more slabs. So basically all I'm trying to say here is figure out how you want to do your floors, because at the end of the day, what's going to happen is we are going to end up with these floors telling us where we're going to be able to put stuff. So get these figured out. We know, for example, now if we wanted to have a window here, we could actually have a window here and a window here. So these are going to be at different elevations. Or what I really like is centering on the tower and making a bridge to an upper story, which is, again, spoiler alerts, that's what we did on the original build. If it's not super clear by now, my goal here is not to show you how to build this build block by block. It's to hopefully convey some ideas and build theory so you guys can build this sort of thing on your own without needing to watch a tutorial. I will have 2 more videos of this nature, hopefully following this one in the next few weeks, that will be implementing these exact same build theories and bringing them together. So hopefully seeing multiple builds using the same base theories will really help to emphasize how these work. But we're gonna avoid building there for a little bit. Instead, we're gonna come through here and we're going to actually explore what I mean by the floor layout. So I got the floor in. It's based off of the elevation that this was determined, and I've divided the insides, and you can see we actually got doors in and everything. You're hearing my footsteps. That's something from the mod, which I think is actually really cool, the way that makes everything sound. We got another window in. I felt there was a lot of space in here because for this, the original, I didn't do the intricate roof, which actually I kind of prefer. I think it looks way nicer than this build does, actually. So yeah, something to consider, like actually going through and doing it without just doing block by block. But because I didn't do that, there was a lot of space, which actually gave me plenty of room for a loft area, which we would not have had I done the roof in here. So that's something. We still have the same den, which resolves the window issues. I didn't do anything fancy for the roofs, but because that wasn't super important for determining where the stuff on the outside was going to be. We did end up with a few extra windows up top. We got some closet spaces. I did do an elevated bedroom, and we got another balcony because I thought it looked nice, and then the bridge over to this area. And look at that, little sneaky dude made it through. There we go. Now it's true vanilla. So with all that information, you can see over here we don't have the floors, it's missing, but that told us where these windows go. It told us where the door was going to go. Having this door in place tells us where the next story of the tower is going to be. So you can kind of see how these things are like it's like a puzzle. The one piece, this corner piece leads you to this edge piece, leads you to this inner piece, and that's what's happening here. We have our floor figured out, which is telling us where this bridge goes, which is telling us where this balcony is going to be, which is telling us where this window can be popped in. And that is kind of the main goal of this step, is figuring out where all the stuff is going to be. And from here, we can move on to details. I'm going to try to keep this brief because we've already covered this, but returning to our block palette for the blue section is mostly andesite. Kind of what I've done is sort of similar to down here. We're kind of just analyzing what each of these blocks truly is supposed to represent and then making it apply to the build for those purposes the best way we can. So for me, I kind of still figured the same thing, like this was built out of some kind of stone or brick, and the blue itself is a plaster. But the corner pieces were intentionally supposed to be a little bit more exposed, a little rougher, and that is, you know, for maybe potential stability reasons. So I kind of had this idea that, you know, a lot of the corners, the edges were going to be broken out like this, and then there would be a little bit of a bleed through. So occasionally, like, you know, the plasters come off of here, and it's really coming off of right there, you know. So that's kind of how I went through with just kind of following that idea. You can see it's kind of looking okay-ish, and that's because we're still missing something really critical. So go around, do all of the texturing, kind of have an emphasis on the corners with a little bleed through coming out of the corners with a little wear and tear, and then we can jump into adding some life to this thing. And the life should be pretty straightforward. We're basically going to be adding a bunch of flower pots, a lot of greenery to this thing. So basically wherever we have windows, we're going to end up with some kind of greenery, except for these big ones because they're not designed to be like that. So all the rest of these that we know are going to be windows, we're going to come through, we're going to stick in the base bush for it and get those all worked out. We know that's going to be a tower, so I won't really dwell on the details of all these, just, you know, so you get a rough idea. Now, each one of them is going to get some kind of framing for them as a flower pot. We're going to add in some details to, intentionally I'm wrapping around the window. You don't have to do this exact design. The idea is to literally frame the window. So you can come up with your own idea for how this should look. The idea, again, is just to make sure that we have the window framed so it's, you know, being totally boxed out. Once we have that going on, though, then we can go from there. And I kind of like to have like no more than a 1 block separation of sprawling vines, right? So we actually want some vines running down this thing, and I found it's really nice if you occasionally throw in some fence posts, as if, you know, the people who own this place aren't just letting it run wild. They instead of actually put something in here for these to grow on, or alternatively you can even possibly think of them as just, you know, the extra branches coming off of the plants themselves. So we're gonna go through, we're gonna do some wrapping around of each of these. Again, the idea is to just make sure we are getting a frame around each of our windows. It's going to help break things up. You're going to really see what we mean when you get into doing all these steps. Just having that broken up with the extra wood. The brown on the blue is kind of nice. If you know, brown is not a real color. It's actually just a shade of orange. So blues and oranges are actually complementary colors, so it's kind of nice that worked out. So we're going to actually have this vine, let's say we'll have this coming down so it's connected. Again, no more than 1 degree of separation between all of your plants, but the idea here is to kind of cover up some of this area, get our framing in place. Maybe we'll do one of these guys, and in this case it looks like it is actually a part of the plant. It's hanging. So yeah, it's all details at that point. It's a lot of green. You can cover up a lot of stuff using the bushes. The bushes are fantastic. And before we wrap this up, that's just a flower bed. Honestly, it's just trapdoors going around in kind of a semi-random fashion, and I just created a little flower bed. So it's real easy. You just kind of map out a little spot, close up all the things, right? Fill in the dirt so it's got, you know, the good textures for it, so it actually looks like this flower pot's filled in with something. And then just fill it with flowers. I did berries and bushes, but you could do flowers, berries, bushes, whatever you want. And adding this elevation really helps to also hide bits of the house. I'm throwing a lot of information at you, but this is really just like a detail-oriented step, and that's not super what this video is really about. I'm not so much teaching you details, I'm more teaching you concepts, things to apply to your builds, not how to do things to your builds, if that makes sense. But that is going to be it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to leave a like while you're down there clicking that subscribe button, because I know you're clicking that subscribe button. A very important thing, Patreon has been completely updated and revamped, and I'm actually keeping up with it. There's actual rewards. You guys can actually get some cool stuff, and I've lowered the prices to like the lowest Patreon will let me do it. And I think it'd be really cool for you guys to check out. You can see some names on screen right now. Thank you guys again so much for watching. Thank you for even thinking about Patreon, and I'll see you guys in the next one.